Well, good morning again, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We have many friends here from Mumbai and from Pune and from other places unknown, and a few from America and all over the globe. So it's very nice to be together and to be able to share. What Devi and I will each talk for a little while on the subject of the guru-disciple relationship, and do we need a guru, and if so, what that relationship is. This whole weekend is kind of built around the question or the subject of discipleship. And so today we'll talk about the guru-disciple relationship. This afternoon we'll talk about how to deepen your spirituality, how to go deeper in your own efforts. And then tomorrow morning we will have a meditation followed by a discipleship initiation, and then we'll have a class on the Om technique. Now today, as I say, Devi Ji and I will both speak a little bit, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions and answers. So if you have a question that occurs to you, please remember it or write it down, or if you're unable to do either of those and are just too eager, then raise your hand and we'll call on you. So I want to talk first about the guru-disciple relationship and the need for a guru. Now, the guru comes, God comes in the form. First of all, let's talk about what a guru is, because there's a lot of confusion on this, much less in India. But America, frankly, has no idea what a guru is, and therefore many, many people in the West in general simply reject a spiritual path and reject help because they don't understand the need for a guru. We have someone very close to us who basically is extremely spiritual in their outlook, but doesn't want to enter into a guru-disciple relationship. He says, why would I want somebody telling me what to do? And that's the thought at a certain level of the guru-disciple relationship. And Americans, being as thorny as they are, there's a national consciousness of why would we want anybody telling us what to do? And so, to a large extent, they reject the idea of a guru, even those who are on a spiritual path. For instance, we are in something called the Yoga Alliance, and it is in America the group that certifies people who have had training in yoga postures and gives them a national certificate, and then that certificate proves to people that they're qualified. It's a little bit like a nurse's certificate, a doctor's, credentials and so on. But within that, we have, Ananda is one of the founding members of that. And Ananda, of course, our yoga postures, our system for yoga postures, is in order to awaken higher consciousness, in order to spiritualize our consciousness, and ultimately to use the flow of energy in the body as awakened and directed through the yoga postures to help bring us into a relationship with God. Now that, we stand almost alone among 10 or 12 organizations that are a part of this Yoga Alliance, because most of them are focused completely on the physical aspect or on the medical aspect. That, at any rate, the benefits of yoga postures for the physical body. And they kind of dismissively talk about Ananda and a couple of other of the members of that organization, member groups of that organization, as, oh, they're guru paths. As if, oh, they don't really count because somehow their rational minds have been taken over by somebody, and we can just discount their thoughts about it. We keep trying to remind them, yoga You didn't invent yoga. Yoga is not a calisthenics exercise. Yoga has an ancient tradition and ancient roots, and that ancient tradition and those roots are rooted in yoga for union. Its very term means union. And so, at any rate, I don't want to dwell on all of this. I just want to begin by saying that the vast majority of people in the world, one, don't believe in God. If they do believe in God, most of them are not aware of the existence really of a lineage or of a guru. And finally you get down to a very, very small percentage of people who understand the need for a guru, and not only understand it, but are willing to enter into a guru-disciple relationship. And so all of you here are among really a very, very small portion of people in the world. In the Gita it says only 1 out of 1,000 wants to know God. And I would say all of us are in that 1 out of 1,000 category, that we want to know God, and we want to know God enough so that we're willing to enter into a guru-disciple relationship. So what about the rest of the world? Well, the first task of, let me finish first the first thought that I said, to understand what a guru is. So a guru is not a person. The true guru has no ego. As Yogananda said, I killed Yogananda long ago, meaning many lifetimes ago. No one dwells now in this temple but God. And so the guru does not have an ego. Now, an ego is defined by Master as the soul identified with the body and the personality. Swamiji has talked about the ego as a bundle of self-definitions. And so a true guru, a Satguru, comes without any self-definitions except I am God, or God has become me, God is me. And he has no attachment to the body or the personality. Swamiji said of Master that he didn't even have habits. All of us, when we put our sandals on or tie shoes, we don't even think about that. We do it automatically because it's a habitual activity. He said Master didn't even have habits of tying his shoes. He would tie them in different ways every time. And so he lived completely in the moment, and so there was no limiting aspect of personality or limiting aspect of the body. Of course, a guru has to have a body, because otherwise God is already present in the world. God is in every atom. He's in every plant and flower and the clouds, and there is nothing in this world except God. But if more than half the people in the world don't believe in God, then the presence of God in that form is not convincing to people. So God is hidden, as Master said, in the nature, in the flowers, and in all of nature. So he remains hidden. Well, if he remains completely hidden, what hope is there for those of us who know that there's something incomplete in our lives, but would have no idea what it is that's incomplete? And so God comes in the form of avatars or of saviors, and they have a world mission that is to awaken masses of people to at least that there is the existence of God. There is the existence of higher realms. There is a group of people that have had actual experience of higher states of consciousness. And they have to come and they have to demonstrate those higher states of consciousness. And very often they also demonstrate a little bit miracles. As it says in the Christian Bible, lest they see signs and wonders, they will not believe. And so Christ came and he demonstrated some miracles. He healed a blind person so that he could see. He healed a lame person so that he could walk. He fed a mass of people out of one little basket of bread and fishes. He walked on water. He had other miracles. Master came when he came to the West. He also did a few kind of the edges of miracles. Now, Master and all the great masters have all the powers that they want to use, but they don't use any of those powers except as God directs them to. One time when Master came back to India in 1936, there was a cousin of his who had died, and he went and brought that cousin back to life. And later someone asked him, did God direct you to do that, or did you do that because you felt a relationship, a familial relationship? And Master said, oh no, God directed me. I would never do anything at all except through the will of God. And so he was completely doing the will of God. And so he did miracles, and he was certainly capable of any miracle that you can think of. But he didn't do it in such a mass degree that it kind of takes away people's free will, people's choice. You know, if they are too flashy and too much miraculous, then people don't think, well, I could become like that. They think, well, they're special, I'll never be like that. So the guru plays a strangely human role. He has to act as a human enough so that we can all relate to him and be inspired to aspire to what he is, and especially his level of consciousness. So the great avatars basically come into the world with a mass teaching. Jesus came in with what later became known as Christianity, but which Master said turned into churchianity. And he came to bring people back to Christianity, the teachings of Christ, not the organizational kind of overlay of belief systems and rituals and hierarchical priests and all of that stuff that isn't true spirituality. It's just stuff, organizational stuff. And so Master was sent to bring people back away from churchianity into Christianity. But he said he was also sent to bring people back to the original yoga of Krishna, because the original yoga of Krishna has been just as much submerged, well, not quite as much, I'll come to that, but has been submerged just as Christianity has been submerged by organizational and hierarchical and ritualism and to a certain extent superstitious behavior. And so all of that, during Kali Yuga, all of those things get attached to religion. Now, I said that original yoga has been lost almost as much as Christianity, but not quite. And the reason for it is this, that the Bible keeps its spirituality and the teachings more or less hidden. They're presented as parables, or they're presented as kind of examples. But in the original yoga of Krishna, with the Gita, we have explicit teachings. But those teachings aren't understandable to most people, even though they're explicit. And so we need someone like Master to come and explain what the Gita is all about. I doubt that anyone in this room, without understanding and having the teachings given to him, would know even what the first 15 stanzas of the Gita were about. what is it? Why? What are all these warriors? What are all these names? What is this blowing of conches and banging of drums and all of that noise? It just, and one would read through that and would think, oh yeah, well that's just two armies getting ready to go to war. And when I first read the Gita, before I had any explanation, I almost left the spiritual path, because at that time, in America, it was the time of the Vietnam War, and I was against war. And so here I read something that seemed very precious to me, the Bhagavad Gita, and lo and behold, Krishna says you have to go fight, you have to go to war. And I said, what nonsense is this? I know that we shouldn't be having warfare with other people. I know that in the depths of my heart. And here I'm trying to tune into this great scripture, and it gives me false advice. What is this? And I was out in a seclusion at the time in the woods, and I took a long walk, and finally I at least came to my senses to this degree. I said, I know that this scripture must be true, and it must be valid, or it could not have changed people's lives for thousands of years. There must be something here that I'm not understanding. There's got to be another teaching underneath this, but I didn't know what that teaching was. The Master comes along, and he explains it completely. Every one of those different warriors represents a different tendency. We have good tendencies, we have bad tendencies. The war, Krishna says we have to fight, we have to have our good tendencies, fight the battle against our bad tendencies, because otherwise the bad tendencies take over the rulership of our mind and our body, and they bring that kingdom, our own mind-body kingdom, they bring it to ruin. And so our good qualities have to fight against those. And the banging and the cymbals and the conch, all of that represents the interior sounds or the sounds of the body. But I would never have come to that on my own. Not in 1,000 years would I have figured that out. And so I needed someone to interpret Scripture. And so someone said a beautiful thing after the essence of the Bhagavad Gita came out. A woman here in India. She said, all my life I have read the Gita without really understanding it. She said, it's as if the Gita were a murti, and I've been pouring milk on that murti. She said, now finally with this book, I can drink that milk. And so finally we can understand. So when I say that in the West, original Christianity was submerged because it was in parables, to a certain extent, even though it was more clear in the Gita and the Mahabharata, it was still in parables for the vast majority of people. So we need someone to come along and interpret spiritual truths to us, because we can't perceive them with the logical mind. We can't even perceive them with our feeling nature, and unless our intuition is highly developed, intuition is the soul's means of knowing, unless that's highly developed, we can't perceive it intuitively either. And so we need someone to come and begin to interpret. And so the first job of an avatar is to come into this world and essentially do something that awakens people, anybody who isn't fixed. It awakens them to, yes, maybe there is a God. Maybe there are higher realms. Maybe there are more subtle teachings. Maybe maybe even I am capable of something more than what I see in front of me. And so Master came and he taught people. So it's awakening people. Obviously the autobiography has awakened millions of people to the possibility of higher realms of consciousness, to God, to the existence of these truths. When Master went around the country in America on what he called his spiritual campaigns. And by the way, if you want to follow, there's through Crystal Clarity Publishers, there is something called Today in History, or Yogananda Today.
On this day.
Yeah, on this day in history, and it follows Yogananda. So today he had given a farewell talk, I think, in Minneapolis. And so each day, there are 3 or 4 for different years of what Master was doing at the time. You can see the enormous activity. But so he went on these spiritual campaigns and he spoke to thousands and thousands of people, taught more than 100,000 people the basic techniques of meditation, the Yogoda lessons, as he called them at that time. But one would think, well, then he's done his job, right? But at one point he was in Minneapolis and there was a crowd of 5,000 people taking his lessons. And someone said, oh, Master, we're going to get so many disciples out of this. And Master said, there are 5,000 here. We will be fortunate if we get 5 devotees out of this crowd. And so one was teaching the masses of people, just waking them up a little bit. But then what happened is that he decided at a certain point he'd done enough of that, especially after the Gita came out. But he wrote his great disciple Rajasi and said, I've now decided that I have done enough of the quantitative work. Now I want to do the qualitative work. I'm going to locate at Mount Washington and let the true disciples come to me, because then I can give deeper training. Okay, so this mass karma brings people to at least the point where they question, do I need a guru? And Swami Kriyananda, a few years ago in India, was asked by a reporter exactly that question, do I need a guru? And he said, no, you don't need a guru. Why would you want somebody telling you what to do and ordering your life about? He said, you don't need a guru. Unless you want to find God, then of course you need a guru. And so out of that mass people that have been awakened, then comes a group that says, I want to find God. 1 in 1,000, it says in the Gita, who really seek Krishna or really seek union. So out of that group, then the guru has a different relationship. And so with that smaller group, he takes on increasingly a personal relationship as their guide. Now, Master said that it is God's law that we need a guru in order to introduce us to God. And so each of us, the soul, needs a guru to get out of the labyrinth of Maya. Think of it this way. We just came from the west part of Mumbai to Pune the other day. It took us an hour and a half to get out of the city itself. Imagine someone who was blind and deaf being put in the West End and told, yeah, just go on. You know, you want to get out of Mumbai. We're going to use, it isn't quite fair, but we're going to use Mumbai as a symbol of Maya for a minute. I know it isn't quite fair, but close enough, all right? So a blind and deaf person put in the West End of Mumbai and told, make your way to Ananda out here. How is he possibly going to do that? He'll die before he gets 5 blocks, you know? And so he needs a guide in order to get him out of Maya. We all need a guide. Now, Mumbai, labyrinthian though it is, I mean, we couldn't even get out of this city without Sagar's help. Sagar was our little guru driver, and Jamal in our car was chasing closely behind. He was a chela, chasing closely behind, and Sagar got us out of Mumbai. Well, if we can't even get out of Mumbai, how are we going to get out of delusion where we're worse than blind and deaf? We don't, at least a blind and deaf person has the understanding that this world exists. We don't even understand the higher realms. And so we've got to have a guide that will bring us into an understanding. And Swami said that this too has different levels to it. When the devotee first begins to awaken, what he's drawn to is he'll read a book, or he'll read some books. When you read a book and you don't agree with something, you can close the book and you can put it back on the bookshelf. And so the first steps are we retain a lot of self-will. And we say, I'm going to decide. I'm going to decide what I believe. I'm going to decide how I believe. I'm going to decide who I'm going to take any advice from. I'm in control here. And so we read a few books, and that helps. It uplifts our consciousness. And I would say that the vast majority of people who are trying to move ahead in their consciousness are at that level, reading books and interpreting them on their own, and taking this and rejecting that. And that's a very positive step, but it's not nearly what's needed. After we've gone through that phase, then we will be drawn to a teacher. And a teacher will help us because the teacher knows more than what we do. That's why he's a teacher. I read a beautiful quote of an athlete who was a very good athlete. And he went to his coach, and basically he was saying, I'm such a good athlete, why do I need a coach? And the coach said, because you don't know what you don't know. But the coach does. And so the guru, we don't know what we don't know. And so we're drawn to go to a teacher. And the teacher begins to tell us, well, do this, do that. You should give up certain things. They'll cloud, don't do drugs. They'll cloud your mind. And if you continue to do drugs, then you won't be able to achieve what you're wanting to achieve, and so on. So a teacher will help the student along. But unless the teacher himself is self-realized, he can't bring the student to the point of self-realization. But what a teacher can do is bring the student along progressively. And so let's, in this sense, talk about a self-realized person as a person who is a genius in mathematics and will train a person who is ready to go for their doctorate in mathematics. Well, a teacher, when that student is in first form, will show them what the numbers are. And when they're in the third form, we'll show them how to add and subtract those numbers. And progressively, the teacher will bring that student along and along and along, and the student goes through many teachers. But if that student said, no, I don't need a teacher, I'm going to just get it out of reading a book, it's not very likely they would progress very much. So a series of teachers brings us along until we're ready to really, frankly, be doctoral students. And what it means to be a doctoral student is we no longer want just knowledge. We want the experience of knowing God. And that's when we are led to a true guru. And so Master said that everyone in this world will need a guru at the final end of the journey in order to introduce him to God. And the fact that we have the connection to such a Satguru is a very, very, very great treasure. As it says in the scriptures, having the blessings of a true guru is the greatest treasure in all the three realms, physical, astral, causal worlds. So having a true guru means someone who can ultimately lead us completely out of the labyrinth that we're in. And so there's a long time that we progress until we get basically to the point where we not only want a guru, but that yearning is strong enough so that we form a deep discipleship relationship to a guru. And when we're at that point, then there's still a journey, but at least let's call it that we're at the base camp for climbing Mount Everest. We still have the ascent to make, but not very many people ever get to the base camp. And so being there, we are ready to make the ascent. So what does it mean to make the ascent between being a true disciple, someone who really does want God? All of our vows at Ananda begin basically, we gave in Pune Center, hi Shiva, we gave the pilgrim vows to a number of people. And that vow starts with, it is my understanding that life is a quest to know God. All the vows start with that understanding. The purpose of this life is to know God. And so we start from that understanding. And then once that understanding is there, what are the steps that happen there? Well, first of all, one of the things that we need to understand is the guru is not, a magic worker. He will not come and tap us on the forehead and put us into samadhi until we're ready ourselves to be tapped on the forehead or the heart and go into samadhi. One time, Dr. Lewis said he kept nagging Master to give him samadhi. And so Master would ignore it, and then finally, one time he looked at Dr. Lewis very powerfully and said, "If I gave it to you, could you take it?" And he looked at him very powerfully, and Dr. Lewis looked at him and said, no, sir, I couldn't. So, yes, the guru will take us that final step, but only once we ourselves have achieved the final step. So, Master said that having a guru is like a doctor. You go to a doctor, and you have an illness, a spiritual illness, and then the doctor gives you a prescription. And he said some people take that prescription home and they put it on a picture frame and they hang it on the wall and they worship the prescription. And he said that does not get rid of our spiritual illness. So he said what you have to do obviously is to do what the guru tells you to do. Now, why does it take a long time? Well, basically, because we're all God, we're all manifestations of God, basically, here's the rule. Anything you want, you get. It might take you a while, but you'll get it. So, if you want to be rich, you will achieve that desire. It might take you some lifetimes, but if the guru gives us a prescription, and we're not yet completely done with the desire to be wealthy, and the guru says, part of it is non-attachment to material goods, but we still have attachment. The guru will not override our free will. So he won't come and tap us on the chest and put us into samadhi, which tears away that desire that we're still holding on to. And so our part in it is to cleanse our heart and cleanse our mind. And so someone once asked Ananda Ma, isn't the desire for God just another desire? Meaning we have thousands and thousands of desires. Isn't this just another one? And she said, yes, it is. But this is the only desire that ends all other desires. And so our part is to cleanse our heart and cleanse our mind of anything that we ourselves have placed as conditions for our happiness between us and finding God. And so we have to not only affirm that the purpose of life is to know God, gradually our hearts and our minds have to become clear enough of past desires and past karmic tendencies to say, that really is my only desire. I don't have any other desires. All I want is to know God. And even then we still have tendencies. We have tendencies toward restlessness. We have tendencies toward lots of things. But at least once we achieve that level of saying, all I want is to know God, then the Guru can work with us in another way. I'll end with this. We had a nice time sharing with a dear friend who was Induban. He was one of the supporters of Swamiji when he came to India in 1958 and was starting to establish a work here at that time. And Indu and his friend Krishan came, and we had a very nice time with them. But Indu told us this story. He was a lawyer. He eventually served on the Supreme Court, and so highly placed lawyer. And at this time he had a big law firm, and the law firm had a huge case, a multi-million-dollar case that involved exchange of monies in America and some goods to be shipped, and somehow it got all bogged down. And Indu, being an Indian lawyer, did not have the credentials or the whatever it took to be able to actually practice law in America. And so he was at the point where the exchange commission and the bills being owed and so on, they had frozen his bank accounts, and he was virtually out of money, and his business was just on the verge of bankruptcy. Well, he had a guru, Narayan Swami, was the family guru, and he went to Narayan Swami, and he asked if he could help him out of this dilemma. And Narayan Swami said, do you surrender to me? And Indu said, what choice do I have? Yes, I surrender. Narayan said, do you surrender to me? And Indu said, well, I have to. There's no other way out of this. Narayan Swami asked a third time, do you surrender to me? And Indu said, yes, I surrender to you completely. Within a month, everything was completely worked out, and Indu business survived, and in miraculous ways that I won't go into. The point being that there comes a time in our consciousness where the Guru represents that element of God that will take us completely out of Maya. And so there comes a point in our lives where we say, there is nothing else that is going to stop me. No desire that I have is going to be placed in front of my desire for God. Yes, I surrender. And then the Guru can take charge of our lives and lead us out of the labyrinthian delusion that we have found ourselves in.
I also will welcome all of you. Some of you we've never met before, but we're very happy to share this beautiful weekend together. The autobiography of a yogi is many, many things. It's life-changing, it's instructive, it's humorous, it's insights into Indian culture. But I think for me, more than anything, it is a description of all the aspects of the guru-disciple relationship. In fact, if you recall, the very first sentence of the autobiography of a yogi is, "The characteristic features of Indian culture have long been the search for eternal verity." This happens every time I speak. The picture's all I think I should not be speaking. Okay, I'll just continue and try to ignore what's going on behind me. So, have long been characteristic features of Indian culture have long been the search for eternal verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. This is how he starts off, that the search for eternal verities, concomitant means the related guru-disciple relationship. And so these two aspects go hand in hand. If we want to find eternal verities, we need the guru-disciple relationship. And even in the very first chapter, if you recall, of Autobiography of a Yogi, where Master talks about how he first heard of Lahiri Mahashaya from a man that had been an employee of his father, Abhinash. And Abhinash had been a clerk under Master's father, working for the railroad. And Abhinash asked Master's father, Bhagavati, "Will you give me leave for a week to go see my Guru Lahiri Mahashaya in Benares?" And Bhagavati at this time, even though he had to be an enlightened soul to be the father of an avatar, he said, "Don't be a religious fanatic. Focus on your work. That's how you'll forge ahead." And poor little Bhagavati kind of hung his head and didn't argue with him. And then the workday was over. Abhinash was walking home, and Bhagavati was riding by in his palanquin, and he dismissed his servants and fell into step beside Abhinash. And they were passing this field of golden wheat. And there in the field, as you all remember, the beautiful story where Lahiri Mahashaya appears in golden light, and he says to Bhagavati, "Don't be too hard, don't be so hard on your employee." And at that's the turning point. And you know, that is not only the turning point in that life, that is the turning point in our life. Because if Bhagavati had not become a disciple of Lahiri Mahashaya, who knows how this line of gurus would have manifested in this world. Of course, it's all in God's plan. I don't think there was really a choice there, but nevertheless, such is God's Leela that incident had to happen. And Bhagavati said, "Not only do I give you leave to go see Lahiri Mahashaya, I will go along with my wife to receive Diksha from this great master who can materialize in a field." And so on the story goes. But the Guru, and then throughout autobiography, just the beautiful, beautiful stories of Babaji calling Lahiri to the cave, to his cave, and materializing a golden palace to fulfill all lingering desires. And then Sri Yukteswar, the great Jnana Yoga, Jnana Avatar, finding Lahiri Mahashaya and all the training he received. And then Master, already an avatar, and yet, as he describes, that quenchless yearning for God. And finally, he was in, looking and looking, but then he was staying in another ashram which wasn't his, and he's walking down the street to do some errands, and he glances down Rygat Lane, and there stood a leonine figure, anciently familiar, who had haunted his dreams. But he didn't believe it, and he kept trying to go forward and fulfill his errands, but he couldn't move. And he turned back and he ran, not knowing even the name of this man, and threw himself at his feet. And Sri Yukteswar said, "My own, you have come to me." And So this link between the guru-disciple, it's so eloquently and with such depth of feeling expressed in page after page and story after story in Autobiography of a Yogi. And then it comes to us. Yoganandaji, instructed by God and his line of gurus, came to the West, 1920, to, as it says in that chapter where he's meditating in Ranchi, and he sees this panorama of faces, and he says, Americans, these must be Americans. And he said, God was calling me there because of the yearning of the souls to be pulling to find God. And then he did his work in the West. And through his direct disciple, Swami Kriyanandaji, who was our teacher for more than 40 years, 45, 48 years, he trained all of us in how to share these teachings, but more important, he showed us the guru-disciple relationship. He showed us the devotion, the unceasing self-sacrifice of service to serve the guru, whatever it took, at whatever personal cost. I will give you everything. Yes, I completely surrender. And then we come now in this wonderful Ananda Sangha, blessed by our great Guru Yoganandaji and our line of gurus, and blessed by the guidance and example of Swami Kriyananda. And if we can understand the guru-disciple relationship and take it as deep as we can, it is guaranteed that we will find at some point, maybe this life, maybe another life, but not very far. As Master said, once the deep longing for God is awakened and the guidance of a true guru is there, if we think of our hundreds of thousands of incarnations as a 24-hour clock, once we have gotten to this point, there's just a few more ticks of the second hand. And then it's done. And so, to not take for granted the incredible gift of what a guru is, I want to share with you this beautiful poem from Whispers from Eternity by Master. And this is what he wrote to Sri Yukteswar, my guru. And it applies to all of us. This should be the relationship we feel with our Guru. Thou light of my life, thou camest to spread wisdom's glow o'er the path of my soul. Centuries of darkness dissolved before the shafts of thy luminous help. As a naughty baby, I cried for my divine mother, and she came to me as my Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. At that meeting, O my Guru, a spark flew from thee, and the faggots of my God-craving, gathered through incarnations, smoldered and blazed into bliss. All my questions have been answered with thy flaming golden touch. Eternal, ever-present satisfaction has come to me through thy glory. My Guru, thou voice of God, I found thee in response to my soul cries. Slumbers of sorrow are gone, and I am awake in bliss. If all the gods are displeased, yet thou art pleased. I am safe in the fortress of thy pleasure. And if all the gods protect me behind the parapets of their blessings, yet I receive not thy benedictions, I am an orphan, left to pine spiritually in the ruins of thy displeasure. O Guru, thou didst bring me out of the bottomless pit of darkness into the paradise of peace. Our souls met after years of waiting. They trembled with an omnipresent thrill. We met here because we had met before. Together we will fly to his shores, where we will smash our planes of finitude forever and vanish into infinite life. I bow to thee as the spoken voice of silent God. I bow to thee as the divine door which leads to the temple of salvation. I bow to thee, to thy Master Lahiri Mahashaya, harbinger of yoga in Benares, and I lay the flowers of my devotion at the feet of Babaji, our Supreme Master. So, really, if all we had to guide us on the spiritual path was that one prayer poem, it would be enough, because it says it all. The silent voice, or the spoken voice of silent God. And it is, as Jyotish said, it is the divine law that for a soul to achieve final liberation, it must be done through the agency of a God-realized master, of a true guru. And I've heard people in the West say, oh, well, I'm not sure, this is my guru, I tried this and I tried that. We don't choose the guru. The guru chooses us when we are ready. Sometimes people have often asked Jyotish and me, well, you were young people, you were 22 years old. Why is it that you left everything, traveled thousands of miles to Swami Kriyananda's ashram at Ananda? And over the years, I've given many answers, but in my heart I know I didn't make that decision. Like a little stray kitten, Master picked me up by the scruff of the neck and put me down in that life. And for that I'm grateful beyond anything I can express. But for each of us, we need to have the humility to understand that God has chosen us. He has shown us this path because of past spiritual efforts and sincerity. And now what is our part in this guru-disciple relationship? I'll touch on a few points. There's something Swamiji has often said, that the spiritual path is 25% the disciple's effort, 25% the effort of the guru on the disciple's behalf, and 50% the grace of God. But the 25% part of that equation, that's the disciple's effort, doesn't mean 25% of our effort. It means 100% of our effort. We often laugh because in America on the radio, sometimes after some athletes will win a big important game, and they're all pumped up, and they say, well, coach said we had to give it 110% effort, 110% effort, but that's what we need. We need to give 110% effort, what we have, and then some. And that's how we grow, honestly. I've seen Swami, whenever he thought we were doing well, then he changed everything we were doing. Because when you think, oh, I'm doing all right, I'm meditating enough, and I have enough devotion, that means you're not growing if you say I'm doing well enough. If we're not at the point where we're saying, Master, this is hard. Master, I don't know how to go any deeper in meditation. I don't know how to do my kriyas any better, but I will keep trying. That's the growth zone. That's where we need to seek to go. But our part, there's some thoughts to share. First of all, to read and study the Guru's teachings, not just with your mind, but with your intuition and with your heart. To attune yourself. That's what Swamiji said when he was in Master's ashram. Visitors would come and Master would give these beautiful explanations to those serious disciples. All he would say is, be in tune. Be in tune. And so we do that. The Yoganandaji has given us, through his writings, enough material to last us many incarnations. Read those teachings, study them, meditate on them, go deep in them. Don't say, oh yeah, I read that book. Until you have become one with that book, you haven't read it yet. I've read autobiographies so many times, I don't know. But every time I pick it up to read it, I'll think, oh, that wasn't in the book before. This must be a new edition. And then I'll look at, no, it's the book you've always read, but you just weren't focused enough to get what the Guru was saying. So go deep in his teachings. And as I say, not just for mental indigestion, not, oh, I read this book and I read that book, but until you feel a transfer of his power into your consciousness, you haven't read the book. So keep working on that till you have those moments where you feel Master speaking to you through his words. Then practice all the techniques he's given us. He wasn't just saying, oh, you might try this, you might try that. His path is scientifically designed, his techniques, to bring us to God. Energization, Hong Sa, Om technique, which we'll be learning tomorrow if you don't already have it, and Kriya Yoga, and the advanced Kriya Yoga techniques. It's not very complicated, but it's comprehensive. And don't become complacent with your techniques. I have heard over the years Swamiji give the the Hong Sa technique 30 or 40 times, give a court class on it. I always got something new out of it. So keep going deep in your techniques. If you don't understand them, ask one of our acharyas. But don't think, well, I haven't found God yet, this Hong Sa isn't too much. Don't criticize the tools. Criticize the craftsman. You're not using the tools properly, so keep at it. Keep refining and going deeper into the techniques. And do them as Master taught them. Sometimes people will come and they say, oh, I found a technique that's almost like Master's teachings. It's really effective. And one of our acharyas said very wisely, you know what's just like Master's teachings? Master's teachings. Just stick with that. You don't have to extrapolate, bring in other ways of doing it, other alternatives. You'll only get confused and you'll stay superficial. So practice the techniques well. Be a good craftsman. And how well is well? Only we can answer that question. Only we can say, Master, I really tried today in meditation. Maybe I felt I succeeded, maybe I felt I didn't, but I tried. I gave it my best effort. That's what God likes. The results will come in God's good time. But our job is to do the very best that we can. So practice the techniques. And then loyalty to the Guru. Don't be a little butterfly flitting here and flitting there. Oh, this new teacher's in town. We'll go hear what he has to say. It will blunt the point of your attunement. Honestly. Don't fool with it. Attunement is the most precious thing in the world, and it's so easy with lack of discrimination to lose that attunement. And so keep focus on the Guru, however long it takes. Just be loyal and know that the Guru will bring you there at the moment that you are ready. There's a beautiful story, perhaps you know it already, from Swamiji told us this, from the life of the great Indian saint Chaitanya. And he had, at this point in his life, he had many followers had come to him. And there was one humble, devoted disciple who everyone recognized was very close to the Guru, to Chaitanya. And one afternoon, the disciples, a certain energy got started, and they went to Chaitanya and they said, when will I find God, Master? And the Guru was in such a bhav that he began telling them, he said, you will find God in this lifetime. Another one, you will find God in 2 lifetimes. You will find God in 5 lifetimes. And then this very close disciple, they kept saying, go ask him, go ask him. He said, no, I don't want to ask him. But they kept pressuring him, so he went and asked the Guru Chaitanya, when will I find God, Master? And Chaitanya said to him, you will find God in 100 lifetimes. And everyone gasped because they thought, whoa, we thought this man was so advanced. And they were kind of talking among themselves. And then they looked out on the porch, and this disciple was just dancing in ecstasy. And they said, didn't you hear what the Master said? He said you would find God in 100 lifetimes. And he said, didn't you hear what the Master said? I will find God. Who cares how long it takes? And Chaitanya went up to him and just touched him. And in that moment, he merged in divine light, the disciple. And Chaitanya looked at the others and he said, I just wanted to show you the caliber of a true disciple that so trusted the Guru's words, the Guru's grace and guidance, that he had no care for how long it would take. And so that deep loyalty, knowing that the Guru is ours. Swamiji has said that it's not a random choice. When the soul emerges as a spark from the divine, the infinite consciousness, the vehicle, the divine agent of the Guru is assigned, is predetermined. So Master has been ours from the moment that we emerged as an individual consciousness. And so he is our channel to bring us back. So be loyal to that. It's everything. And then other things that we need to do. Devoted service. Service is really love in action. Swami has expressed that. So everything that you do, just try to say, Lord, I am serving thee. If it's great, if it's humble, if it's cooking. We were in Mumbai the other night and Laju made a beautiful dinner for 30 of us. She cooked it all. It was so filled with love. And it was service to the Guru. And so whatever we do, just try to let that devotion be expressed through your hands, through your feet, through your mind, through your speaking. Just try to find ways to serve the Guru and to serve his mission. And is it important that we do that? Maybe the world doesn't need it, but we need it. We need to be able to say, Lord, my hands are your hands, my feet are your feet. And however you want to use me in those ways. And then finally, practice the Guru's teachings in daily life. It's not enough even to have a deep meditation, to have devotion and loyalty. But if we go about our daily life not living as an example of discipleship, if we get angry, if we get reactive, if we don't trust other people, if we challenge other people, all the things, if we're dishonest, how can we say that the Guru is acting through us? We're a house divided. We have a foot in 2 boats. So in every action in your life, Swamiji taught us this. He said, I always ask the question, what would Master do? And if you can ask that, and then try to feel that, what would Master do? It may not be pleasant. It may not be what you want to do. But if it's what Master wants you to do, you will feel his grace and his blessings. So our outward life is a reflection of our discipleship. And whether people ever know that we are disciples of Master or not, if they are with you and they feel something that uplifts their consciousness, that brings them peace, that makes them feel a higher expression of divine friendship, then we are being channels for Master in this world. Recently, before leaving on this trip. We left at the end of August. At the beginning of August, we went to visit a friend of ours in America who's been in prison for 30 years for a crime that he didn't commit. It's a very complex story, but suffice it to say, very good man, disciple of Master. Jyotish went to prison about, 15 years ago and initiated him into Kriya Yoga in the prison. He asked us for a spiritual name, and we just gave him the name Jairam, so that's his name now. But we were there sitting in the prison with him, in the visiting room, and it's not a nice place to go. It's like going to hell, really. The guards and the other people, and sadness and tragedy and lost lives and so forth. But we sat there. We went with Jairam's sister and brother-in-law and Jyotish and I. We sat around a table. There were, maybe 100 other men being visited by friends and family. It was very hard. But we were all disciples of Master, all Kriyabans. And we sat there, and it was like a shaft of light just came down in the middle of that darkness. And the guards were all there with their guns and so forth. And I said to Jairam, "Can we meditate?" He said, "Yeah, they won't stop us." So we just sat there and held hands, and we prayed and meditated. And it was so beautiful because you could feel Master was there in the midst of the darkness. And I hope that the other people in that room felt a little bit of it too. But wherever you are, you can bring Master's light into the darkness if you keep him as a vibrant reality in your own heart. So this is our part, and then the Guru's part is to free us and make us know God.
We have still a few minutes, so we're happy to answer some questions if you have any.
Firstly, thank you so much for that wonderful satsang. You really felt Swami's love and Master's love, so thank you. As you mentioned, Devi, that Master always talked about attunement, and for disciples to build attunement and to build devotion. So could you share some examples from Swamiji's life when he really found himself in a place that he wanted to build attunement to devotion, and things that he did, so hopefully that might inspire us to do something.
We'll share a few examples. First of all, it's okay, I think it's fine. When he first came to Master, he had been very intellectual and a little bit arrogant because we know how brilliant he was. And so he could always out-argue anyone. And he also was a deep and old soul. And so he didn't accept what his professors were saying, the falsity of his professors. And so when he came to to Master, basically he had never found anyone that he could wholeheartedly believe and accept. But when he found Master, then everything changed. But he still had this tendency toward a little intellectuality, and Master kept telling him to get devotion. So he said that he loved to sing, and he would chant for hours every day. And you've probably heard this story where one time Master in the desert, he still had a little bit when he was very new with Master. And so in the desert, Master had, they were together, a small group, and Master said to a disciple, "Bring me that paper bag." And he had a paper bag, and he said, he picked out of the paper bag, he said, "Turn the lights down." and he picked out, he had a little gun, and he squeezed the gun and it shot sparks out of it. And then he was laughing and laughing. Then they turned the light on, and he had a second gun, and he shot this, and it shot a little man up, and then a parachute unfurled, and the parachute came down, and Master was laughing and laughing. Then he looked deeply at Swamiji. Thank you. And he said, "What do you think, Walter?" And Walter, having a little bit of intellectualism still left, said, "Very nice, Master." And Master said, "Suffer little children to come unto thee, for such is the kingdom of God." And so he was trying to get him over that and to be childlike. Well, Swamiji desperately wanted to be over it, so it wasn't as if Master was pushing him in a direction. And so he chanted for hours and hours. He thought of Master all the time. Gradually, he became so attuned that he said he realized that it wasn't enough to try to have Master help him with every question that he had. It wasn't enough to attune my thoughts to Master. I had to tune all my desires, my emotions, everything to Master. And so he achieved that state. And then toward the latter part of his life, he said, "I can't even tell where Kriyananda stops and Master begins." Because he had again and again and again tuned his mind. So on a daily level, not only practicing the techniques, not only the devotion of a disciple to a guru, but on a daily basis, basically saying, is this what you want me to say, Master, in this paragraph? Is this what you want me to do? Constantly with that, until Master was so close, so interiorized, that there was really no difference.
I think that's that could be a whole class. It's a very hard thing to answer briefly. But I think what I saw over the years was just the total self-offering and self-sacrifice to serve the Guru at whatever personal cost. I can't tell you the number of times he was so ill, could barely get out of bed. And then he would say, "Oh, okay, time to give the class," and he'd just get up and give a discourse. People are waiting. And so I think by no longer considering his personal needs at all, but just to say, whatever ounce of energy I have in me, whatever little bit, I will give to thee. And that, of course, was part of it, to try to present Master's teachings and bring others to the path as clearly and purely as he could. Someone said to us, this was I'll just say the name, Sangeeta. Many of you know her. She was one of the first people that came to Swami when he started the work in Gurgaon. And we asked her, we said, "There are so many other ashrams in India. Why did you come to this one?" And she said, "Because the people were so sincere. I'd never seen that kind of sincerity." It was a nice answer. But that was also from Swami. He had absolutely no pretense about who he was. He was just a humble disciple. And he said, at the end of my life, I don't want to be thought of. I wrote these books, I wrote this music, I started communities. I just wanted to be remembered that I was a good disciple. And so he imbued that to all of us. Very little sense of self-importance, just the deep desire to serve, to be a channel for Master, knowing with all humility that we still have many things within ourselves to overcome, many barriers that keep us from merging with God. But that's the only things I can say, I would like to give it more thought actually, but just on total selfless service, and then the desire to share Master with, when Swami was driving across the country after having read autobiography as a young man of 22, he said, I had two thoughts that kept going in my mind. I want to know God, and these teachings are so wonderful. I want to share them with everyone. And so I think that defined his life.
Thank you.
No, fine.
So thank you for all of this. Question is, what is the purpose of
I would say twofold. In fact, I'll tell a story, but first of all,
Can
I'll
you
give.
repeat the question for those
Okay.
in the back?
He said, what is the purpose of life, of
And-
human life?
And that does not bespeak of ignorance, it bespeaks of wisdom to ask the question.
Yes. In fact, whole paths are nothing but asking that question. There's a broad answer, which is that all of us are extensions of God. We come out from God. And veils of ignorance are over our minds and our emotions. So we're projected, propelled outward. And the purpose of life is gradually to merge back into God, which is our true nature. And so that's the ultimate purpose of human life, of all life, that we come out from God, it's to merge back into God. That's the essence of Sanatana Dharma. But there's also a second purpose that applies more to this particular life. And this, I'll tell a story. Again, it's from this man, Indu, who we mentioned about he was a disciple of Narayan Swami, and Narayan Swami helped him out of his dilemma. But for about 3 years, he asked the same question of Narayan Swami, what is the purpose of life? And Narayan Swami would never answer him. And then a day came when Narayan Swami drove up in front of their house, walked up, and said, I've come to answer Indu's question. And Indu said, what question? He said, the question you've been asking me at least 20 times, what the purpose of life is. But first let's have a nice meal. And he had Rani on, who was an extremely saintly person, the mother, cook a beautiful meal. And then afterwards he said, the purpose of this life is to balance accounts. Balance your accounts. That ultimately everything has to come to zero. So you have had something in the past where you have imbalanced an account. Perhaps you have taken something from someone. Perhaps you have acted with anger or acted out of ignorance or violence. And in this life, we have to balance out those accounts. So we have to get that karma, and we have to even it out, make it zero. That's one reason why we should always be grateful for absolutely everything that comes to us, because it's helping us balance those accounts. If something comes and we say, oh, I don't deserve this, this is unfair, it's my boss's fault that this happened, why is he telling me that I was wrong when he's wrong? We're just creating more accounts. So whatever comes, we should take it. Doesn't mean that the boss isn't wrong, but we should not be reactive, and we should balance out our accounts. So nothing is left that is unbalanced. And then at that time, we're ready to go into liberation. But until those accounts are balanced, we may even go into high states, but then we have to come back from those high states and do a little more accounting work until that column gets down think of trillions and trillions of thoughts and actions and deeds. All those things have to ultimately get down, finished out, done with, and the sum total is zero. And when we're zero, then we're done. There was a Swami who took the name Shunyananda, zero, and God bliss through being zero.
One more question.
Yeah, one more, and then we'll have.
Thank you so much for your talk. I'm really fortunate to be here and to find myself in a position where I need to look no further to find my true guru. My question is, how do we prepare ourselves to be in a state where we can have conversations with Master Ji and to feel his presence so strongly and so clearly as if he was almost in a physical body?
Well, okay, how do we prepare ourselves to have conversations with Master and to be able to feel that we're so close to him that he's almost in a physical body? Well, there are many answers to that. One is devotion. Another is true discipleship, wanting to do everything that you can think of. He said, when I'm gone, I will speak to you through your conscience. And so if your conscience tells you, oh, you should be doing that, do it. And that will be following his guidance. He said, the reason that God doesn't come to most people is because they only want to argue with him. And so Master won't come if we want to argue with him. He'll come when we don't want to argue. And increasingly he will come. But he himself said, if you think me near, I will be near. And in fact, he already is near. He already is right beside us. So the problem is not getting him to do his part. It's getting us to clear away the mental static that isn't able to perceive him. And so deep meditation, devotion, trying the best we can for attunement, all of those, and then on a daily basis thinking that he's near.
I'll just add one little thought and then we'll take our break for lunch. We need to practice talking with God. So talk with him all the time. When you're driving in your car, share all your thoughts with him. Oh, look at that person almost hit me from their side. Whatever it might be talking with God all the time, be sharing your thoughts. That means interiorization. Not always talking outwardly, not always being distracted by, media and so forth, but have an inward dialogue going on all the time. There was a man that Swamiji met. He was a great saint of our time, a Christian, who was a missionary. He was sent to some very remote island in the Philippines, and the people there were just not at all open to his work. And so he just began an interior life with Christ, and he became a great saint. Swami met him, and some friends of ours whose parents were actually missionaries in China were at a dinner in this man's honor. His name was Frank Laubach. There's a beautiful book of that small little booklet, Letters of a Modern Mystic. But they asked this man, Frank Laubach, to do the prayer before they sat down to eat. And our friend's parents said it was so remarkable because it wasn't like, okay, now we're going to pray. It was like he let them in on an interior conversation that he was having with God all the time. And just for that little time, he talked out loud to God. And then he was silent. But his conversation kept going on. So we have to prime the pump. If we want God to have a conversation with us, we have to direct our thoughts, our words, our impressions, our reactions, our mistakes, our shortcomings, everything. Just bring it to God.
He speaks in a quiet voice, and if we're constantly saying, when he's trying to whisper to us, that's why Master called it whispers from eternity. we're constantly saying, "When are you going to come, God? I want you to come, God. God, when are you going to come? I'm really wanting you to come now. When are you going to come?" May be a little hard to hear those messages. Okay.